Yu-Gi-Oh! Players live in a prison of their own making. Among all card games, there is no other community as consistently cucked in the mind as duelists. Magic the Gathering players realized long ago that their game was pretty much no fun whatsoever, and since then have completely revolutionized what it means to play Magic, from innovations like Modern, to mental games like More Mir Vig, to Commander, which supplemented Standard as the most popular way to play their game. To a duelist, our cards are game pieces, but to a planeswalker, their cards are cards. They decide the game. This leaves Magic players in a perpetual state of excitement. Sure, Bagel might not be good in Standard, but it's killer in 3-Course, a new format I just created where you can only play food and the objective is to calorically min-max. Inversely, we are trapped. If a card doesn't have applications in Advanced Constructed, it might as well be Kindling. After years of denigrating any duelist who dared to dream of a world beyond the ban list, Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are finally singing the siren song of alt formats. From official joints like Genesis, to community creations like Cubes, to new innovations like Smash, we are finally imagining a format in which Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards are used to have fun. So, since we're already taking a page out of the Magic community's book, why not rip off their greatest format of all time? This is... Have you ever heard of DANDAN? DANDAN, or Forgetful Fish, is an alt format in Magic. It had its moment a few years back and now has become such a mainstay among mages that there's even a secret lair for it. Although in classic Wizards fashion, they found a way to make money from the community without asking any of them first. There are a million better primers on this format, but the gist of it is this. Sometime between 1996 and 1997, Nick Floyd accidentally invented one of the most exciting and enduring ways to play Magic the Gathering. It's been on and off referenced since 2022, but took off in 2023 after Ristic Study made a video about it. The way you play DANDAN is this. Both players draw from an 80-card deck in the center of the table. While each player has a separate field, they do share a graveyard. There is only one way to deal damage in this format, the miserably bad DANDAN. From there, the rest of the deck is full of some supremely interesting cards. Crystal Spray can act as a removal spell, changing the text on DANDAN to engineer a condition the player can't fill. Unsubstantiate can bounce DANDAN to fade damage. But the most interesting part of the deck is Memory Lapse, a counterspell that returns the card to the top of the deck. Because both players draw from the same deck, this not only prevents the DANDAN from landing, it guarantees you a copy of the only card that can win the game. Fights over the top of the deck through instant speed draw spells, shuffle effects, and competing lapses are the centerpiece of this format. The end result is a game where combat is simplistic, but players need to thread the needle between planning a dozen turns ahead and engaging in counter wars to ensure they're the threat. Ever since DANDAN took off, people have tried emulating it in Yu-Gi-Oh! But there's a couple of things that prevent it from working perfectly. In DANDAN, Summoning Sickness gives you time to respond to an opponent's push, whereas in Yu-Gi-Oh! If the shields are down, you can just get OTK'd. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is lacking some of the integral parts of the deck, like the Island Home modulation. And importantly, quick removal spells in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are telegraphed. Still, I think I've come up with something that scratches the same ridges in my brain as DANDAN. I'm going to walk you through all 80 of the cards in the deck that I built, and then give you an example of how a turn might play out. Let's begin with the monster, Red-Haired Hasty Horse. Shouts out to Dymax for suggesting this, but I think this monster is just about perfect. Here's why. The summoning condition for Hasty Horse means you aren't just taking 2k when it's drawn. You can take precautionary measures and prevent its summon by setting in relevant zones. Additionally, it means that a removal spell for the monster is pretty much always available. Any card kept in hand can contest it on the following turn. Finally, this direct attack effect doesn't come up often, but it can come up in some really interesting ways. Like in DANDAN, we're on 10 of this card. Next up is our Memory Lapse. Unsurprisingly, we're playing Phoenix Wing Wind Blast to return Horse to the top of the deck. We are on 8 of this, and every other card in the deck is at 3. I'm going to break them all into piles. Like in DANDAN, most interaction is built to contest an inevitably top-decked horse. Time Seal and Jar of Greed are pretty straightforward. Each gets you the top card of the deck, albeit one slower than the other. Conscription and Kingyo-Suki are amazing in situations where you can guarantee the top of the deck is the horse, but often you'll be firing them just to cross your fingers and survive. Archfiend's Oath is maybe the hardest card in the deck to play. Held in hand, it's an incredible punish for Phoenix Wing, but in the context of cards like Jar of Greed, it can get you into big trouble. Next up are the Stackers, Spellbook Organization, and Fruits of Kozaki's Labor. These cards enable you to sculpt the next few turns of draws from yourself and your opponent, leading to profitable plays, conscriptions, Kinkyo-Sukis, and more. There are a few cards in this deck that interact with the stacking process: Sword of Deep-Seated, the Transmigration Prophecy, and Pot of Duality. Sword of Deep-Seated is probably the most skill-testing card in the deck. Pitching it optimally can prevent an opponent from drawing live. Using it as the card to pop Hasty Horse can put your opponent in a rough situation. And there are situations where an opponent who's taken damage from Archfiend's Oath can die to a Hasty Horse equipped with this card. The Transmigration Prophecy is good for a number of reasons. You get to shuffle during a chain, you get to tuck back housekeeping, more on that in a second, and you get to remove the King Yosuke target. But it's also just a fantastic mechanism for ensuring the game doesn't go to deck out. Duality is, of course, an incredible card, even though you can't horse the turn it's activated, but it does double duty by shuffling the deck. On the topic of these public information spells, Mind Crush is in here as well. If your opponent adds a card off King Yosuke or Pot of Duality or Archfiend's Oath, it can be an easy call. To combat this, I've also included Good Goblin Housekeeping, which performs the same role in the deck as Accumulated Knowledge in DANDAN, and Hand Destruction, the latter of which can also be used to stack swords at quick speed, but can be hedged against by keeping cards out of your hand. There are some upsides to playing DANDAN in Yu-Gi-Oh!, the first of which is column management. A couple of cards do interact with the game in a way that Magic can't: Broken Line and Fuse Line. Broken Line is some of the best flat negation in the format, but it can be easily played around. Fuse Line's primary purpose is as one of the best tools for clearing the way for Horse. Speaking of a way cleared for Horse, there are two cards here that can pop it at instant speed by setting a card in its associated zone: Dust Tornado and Terrors of the Overroot. These cards have sets that will trigger the self-destruction effect of the Horse, meaning they can be leveraged as powerful 2-for-1s, or in the case of Overroot, 3-for-1s, provided you've spent some turns sculpting your hand. For flat removal, we're playing a number of shuffling cards. Drowning Mirror Force and Jelly Cannon shuffle a monster back into the deck. Compulsory Evacuation Device is functionally just a Waboku, but it can also be used offensively to bounce your own horse in response to its self-destruction or a removal spell. Finally, Dark Bribe is an incredible card for closing a chain, but if you're not desperate, you can use the draw to manipulate the top of the deck in your favor. And that's it! There's some weirdness in here, of course. I don't like all the text on Horse. I think Oath is strange because it requires you to count your life points not in multiples of 2,000. There's some annoying parts of resolving hand destruction with one singular deck, but after dozens of games with different iterations on this pile, this is as close as I think I'm going to get. Let's talk about gameplay. So the gameplay in Hasty Horse is going to be completely alien to you if you've only ever played Advanced. Each game is probably going to include a series of turns where nothing happens at all, both players building up resources until they can mount an incredible push, daring the other to blink. There's not an attempt at a no TK every single turn. Here's how one such push can play out. Both players draw 5 cards. Player 1 activates Duality, revealing Archfiend's Oath, then sets 3 cards, retaining 2 in their hand as removal. The second player sets 4, 2 in the open zones to box out the horse, and passes. At the end phase, player 1 activates Fruits of Kozaki's Studies and sets the top cards of the deck. They draw, then activate Archfiend's Oath. Since they know the top card of the deck, they call it Red-Haired Hasty Horse. Player 2 responds with Jar of Greed to steal the horse before the reveal. Player 1 responds to the jar with Conscription to summon the horse to their side of the field. Player 2 responds with Phoenix Wing Wind Blast, discarding a horse to target player 1's remaining set. After that, they chain King Yosuke, targeting the horse they just discarded to the graveyard. Player 1 responds with the targeted Transmigration Prophecy, shuffling back the Duality and the horse. At resolution, the shuffle is performed, King Yo reveals a Broken Line, Conscription, as luck would have it, reveals a horse anyway, and Oath reveals a Sword of Deep-Seated. Player 2 now reveals their last set, Terrors of the Overroot, and targets the Oath, setting Broken Line in the horse's column. This destroys the horse, but player 2 will now have to make a mental note of Broken Line's location to play around it for the remainder of the game. After this, both players may wait a few turns to once again build up resources. This is generally how the game goes. Big push into big push. And that's it! I tried my hardest to keep this deck full of cheap cards, so if anyone wants to give this strategy a spin, they can. Unfortunately, there's not really a way to do it using existing Yu-Gi-Oh! Software. Nothing allows you to draw from the same deck. Still, I've had a blast playing it with my friends, and I hope you'll give it, or some alternative format, a try. See you next week.